it going, YouTube? Welcome to Outdoor Life with Nick Laws in partnership with the Montana Wilderness Survival and Bushcraft School. If you'd like to check out the website for the school, the link is in the description. That's Montana Wilderness Survival and Bushcraft. With that said, let's get going on what we're going to do today. I'd mentioned in a previous video that I'm going to start a series of videos on taking things back to the basics. Right down to the nitty-gritty and what you need to survive in an adverse situation, wilderness situation. These can be applied across the board in emergency situations, or if you just like to be a little more primitive, a little more bushcraft in the way that you camp. These will help you with that too. So enough said. Today we're going to cover fire, the very basics of what you need to do to get yourself a fire going. These aren't in any specific order of importance, but I would put fire right there tied for first. I can't really put it ahead of it, but right there tied for first with water. Sometimes you're not going to be able to drink the water that you have without fire, and I'll show you one example of that today. So without further ado, let's get right into the basics of fire. All right, so I guess what we'll get into first is let's see, we'll call it setting yourself up for success. I've camped and hiked and spent time out in the bush with people that, you know, it was their turn or their job to get the fire going, and watch them struggle. And what it came down to was not setting themselves up. Setting up your tinder, setting up your kindling, setting up your next stages of, your fire. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through what I have available here and collect some tinder. Now things are going to be different where you're located, your terrain, where you are in the country, where you are in the world. But the basic principles will apply regardless of the materials that you have available to you. So let's get into our tinder. All right, so our tinder. One thing that I love using out here, it's probably the best thing, is the inner bark from these quaking aspens. Here's a dead quaking aspen. There's some live quaking aspens. Any kind of inner bark or even an outer bark like on a cedar that you can scrape into a fine fiber is what you're going to be looking for. Now something that you can break down, let's see, we'll get right down into here, into these fine fibers is going to be a fantastic start for you. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a good chunk of this, and we'll move on to the next step for our tinder. All right, so one thing that I have become accustomed to start trying to carry is something to put all these things that I'm gathering in, whether it's going to be wild edibles, plants, etc. Today we're talking about tinder. So I've got the pockets on the front of the jacket, but what I've grabbed was a old military surplus. I believe it was an IFAC pouch, just a pouch, so that I can, put all these materials in here, keep my hands free. With that said, the next thing we're going to grab is some of these tall dry grasses. Now the dry grasses, I mean, if you have enough of them, you can do it with just the dry grasses, but they flash burn. Not quite as fast as like a dried cattail, but they burn up very quick, so you don't have much time to work with it. But as part of our tinder, we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab a whole bunch of these dry grasses, get them in our pouch to take back with us to go along with that inner bark. So, like I mentioned, set yourself up for success. We gathered our tinder materials, which is your first step. That's what's going to take your spark or your flame. But you can't just light that and then go and gather other materials. And it seems like common sense, and for a lot of us it is, but I've seen people really struggle with that. And again, like I said, it comes with setting yourself up for success. So the next step, what I like to do after I've gotten my tinder together, is to start on my kindling. I've heard people use different terms, similar terms, but what I go by is you start with pencil lead thick material. Then you move up to pencil thick material. And then from there I go to about thumb size. And then once you've established those thumb size sticks, you can then move up to your more substantial wood, wrist size, larger, start splitting wood. Because once you've established a coal base with the thumb size sticks, then you have something that's maintainable, that's sustainable, that you can walk away from. It's not going to blow out. So let's get some of those together. All right, so once you've established a little bit of your kindling, the pencil lead thick, the pencil thick, and the thumb thick, then you can go ahead and get your tinder bundle together. When it comes to your tinder bundle, think of what a bird nest looks like, an actual bird nest. What you want to do is create something like that. Your finest materials on the inside work out to a little bit of your thicker materials, but you're building a bird nest. Now your bird nest is going to catch your spark or your flame. And then from there you work to your pencil lead, pencil thick, and thumb thick. So here you have your pencil lead, pencil thick, thumb thick. Now, if you have to travel a decent distance from where you're making your fire to where you're gathering your materials, you're going to want more than this. I'm actually surrounded by these materials. So I have enough to definitely establish a fire, maintain it, and gather more materials. Before we get the tinder bundle put together, one more thing I want to add, as you see a lot of people doing it, and I personally don't do it, just I don't have the need to do it. But if you can't find any of these smaller materials for whatever reason, it's just larger material, you can break these larger materials. So here's one of the thumb sized sticks. You can break these down. You'll see people making feather sticks. I don't make the feather sticks because I set my fire up this way. A feather stick is basically, if you have a nice sharp knife, preferably a Scandi grind Bushcraft style knife will do it better for you. You can work the end of this stick into these nice paper thin curls. Here, I'll get a couple made and I'll put you a close up. And these can act as your real light tinder. And they can also be added to your tinder bundle to give you something substantial. If you watch my channel, you'll see that I love to use fat wood. I'm going to use some in my bundle, but we're not going to go too far into exactly what fat wood is and where to find it, because I'm going to save that for another video. So let's get this tinder bundle put together and I'll show you what I got with that. All right, so the lighter materials that we gathered in the beginning are going to be your tinder bundle. And like I explained about these dry grasses, the same would be with like a dried cattail head, is that these flash, burn up real quick. But they make an excellent center to your tinder bundle. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, think of what a bird nest looks like. I'm actually going to build a nest with these really dry materials with a spot in the middle that's going to catch my ignition source. So as you can see with some of these, I can actually strip the stuff right off, ball it right up, get that right in the center. Now, we had talked about fat wood, and that is my favorite, most consistent, I would call it a fire extender. You can also add some sap to this. So I'm surrounded by pine trees, and if I went around, I could source some pine resins from broken branches or wounds in trees and add it to this. And what that'll do is it acts as a fuel and a fire extender to give me a little more time. The extenders are very important if your materials are damp. Luckily, this is all dry. So what I'm doing here is I'm building a nest. Nice fine materials in the center, nice fine materials outside of it. What I'll do is I'll incorporate some of this inner bark. And again, if you can't find a dry, shredded inner bark like this, one thing I don't have here that is one of the best fire starters besides the fat wood, in my opinion, is birch bark. If you have birch trees near you, Some of that dry birch bark is absolutely top of the line. It's got oils in it. You can actually take a flame directly to some birch bark, probably get your fire going right with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to break these fibers down. You can see the dust coming out of them. And as we break this down, it gets finer and finer. It's going to take our ignition source, whether it's direct flame or spark, very easily. So we're going to go ahead, take this real fine material, start getting it into our fire bundle. So I'm going to go ahead and break some more of that up. I believe this is enough because everything is dry here to get me going. But just to give you an example, we'll get some more of this broken up for you. All right, before we go ahead and light the tinder bundle and get the different stages of our kindling in, I want to go over ignition sources briefly. I think a lot of it I'll get into when I actually go into like a kit. What I carry as a kit, what I believe should be carried at all times as a kit. But basically, if you watch my channel, I use a ferro rod 99% of the time. The only time I'm not using a ferro rod is if it's real inclement weather or stuff is really wet, then I'll want to use a direct flame. But the ferro rod is great. This material will take the spark. The ferro rod doesn't run out of fuel. We also have all the different things that I believe should be in your kit anyway. Your matches, a big lighter is absolutely fantastic. I do have some other fire starting like assistant material that I keep, which one of them would be like a cotton ball soaked in Vaseline. There's all sorts of manufactured fire starter materials that you can buy, different blocks and materials and powders and stuff like that. I tend to want to just keep it as natural as possible, as often as possible, just because I really enjoy that. I love being out in it. So I think we're going to save going into all the different ignition sources and how to use them for a video when I go into actually breaking down the kit that you should carry. That's going to be part of the basics, is your kit. But this is really just to show you the basic bottom start of how to get your fire going, how to have success with your fire every time. So we're going to go ahead and reset up the camera, and I'll get you zoomed in on the bundle. I'm going to use my ferro rod. Like I said, I enjoy using the ferro rod 99% of the time. And I'll show you how I layer these in. And there's some other things that come along with being able to start your fire that I might break down in the kit, or I may save to a complete separate video. And that is like your primitive fire starting techniques, your hand drills, your fire bow, your bow drills, and also knocking flint on steel to a char cloth. But I believe those three methods, the hand drill, the bow drill, and the flint and steel method, are going to be a whole separate episode on some of your more primitive ways to get a fire started. That said, I do believe that if you're out here enjoying yourself in the wilderness, just on a hike, if you're, wherever you are that you're going to be starting a fire, that you should have multiple redundancies to be able to start the fire. I personally, on me right now, have the ferro rod, a couple of different Bic lighters, some regular matches, some waterproof storm matches. I have redundancy, so if one fails or one gets lost or one gets broken, I have a backup. So let me get the camera resituated, and we'll go ahead and get this going. All right, so before you actually commit to lighting it, make sure that you're staged. I have my pencil lead thick, my pencil thick, my thumb thick, all right here within hand's reach. So once this tinder bundle gets going, I don't have to scramble around or move or do anything. I had mentioned about the fat wood. I tend to add fat wood to all my bundles. What fat wood is, and we're going to do a separate video on what it is and where to find it, is basically resin impregnated pine. So as you can see by this color, that this is completely impregnated with the pine resins. Gives off an excellent smell. It's absolutely my favorite material when it comes to starting a fire. What you can do also is find actual resin coming off of wounds from pine trees or broken branches and add them into this, and it'll give you an extension. Also, like I said, if you wanted to add some curls into your bundle, it gives you a little bit more something substantial, you can go ahead and do that too. I tend to not need them because of the way I set up my fire, but that is always an option. But I do like to add the fat wood because it gives me a fuel. So we're going to go ahead and just put a couple paper thin pieces of the fat wood right in there. Just like that. And as you can see, this is just absolutely beautiful. And we'll get into that. The smell is so fantastic. All right, so once you've established your bundle, then you use your ignition source. Like I said, I'm going to use the ferro rod. I like to use it. You can go ahead and hit this right with your lighter. Hit this right with your match. It's going to do the same thing. Actually, the lighter and the match, if you're in a nice dry deal there, is actually going to be more efficient. But I enjoy doing it this way. And so we're going to go ahead and get us some sparks in here and see if we can get this going. Doesn't always work right away. Sometimes you'll have to work your tinder bundle. Get that flame going into it. Now, depending on how this is establishing itself, you can go ahead right away and go ahead with your sticks. Now, see, I've got this thing going out, so it's going to need a little help. Well, we lost her. Go ahead and get another spark in there. See the flash burn from the grasses? They don't last long enough to really establish anything. You got to get it into this bark. All right. I'm glad that I actually struggled a little bit with that for the video. It's not always as easy as it looks, and this is why setting yourself up is huge. So you go ahead and take your pencil lead, put it all on at once. Don't do the one stick method. Get it all in there. Let that establish. You know, depending on the moisture content or what's going on, will differ in time. But go ahead and let those establish for a minute. And then go ahead and start getting your pencil thick stuff on. You know, up to the next stage here. So we got the pencil thick. I tend to want to crisscross them. I don't. Some people like to build a very formatted fire, you know, a TP shape or a log cabin, Lincoln log deal. I just crisscross them so that I have air coming through the materials. I don't have an established shape, so we just go with that. So you let these pencil ones get established, get a good amount of those on. Now, as you can see, your goal is to start from the finest material and work your way up in size. And once you get that concept, starting a fire fuse is going to be very easy. Now, once you get a couple of those pencil-sized pieces established, you can start to work in your thumb-sized pieces. Now, you don't want to rush the process because you'll drown out your fire. If you just chuck all this onto there all at once, you can just put it right out. And as you saw, we struggled with the bundle a little bit. All right. So we'll go ahead and we'll work on some of these thumb-sized sticks. Like I mentioned, once you get your thumb-sized material established, Now you have time to relax a little bit. It wouldn't be a bad idea to have your next stage, your wrist size, and your split wood already set up. But if you're in the cold or you just want to get some water boiled, getting this part done first is not a bad idea also. So like I said, these basics are in no order of like importance, you know, most important to least, but fire is right there, like I said, with water for me. It's tied for first. For example, today I brought a freeze-dried meal, and there is a flowing source of water about 400 yards down into that ravine. That's a pain, but what I do have is snow. So to be able to use the snow for cooking or drinking, I have to melt it, hence the need for the fire. If I was getting water out of a pond, a puddle, a creek, a lake, whatever source I could come up with, if I needed it that bad, you're going to want your fire to sanitize your water. We will go over water and into all the different steps of being able to sanitize. My preferred way of sanitation is to boil it, and we'll go into all that stuff on a different video. So basically that's your basics. You're going to want with your tinders, set yourself up for success. Go ahead and get all your materials together. I've watched it more than once where somebody got a few sticks together. You know, I got a couple of twigs here and a little bundle of grass, and you know, they may get that started and then it poofs out and they're scrambling to throw in another stick and they're looking for more stuff to throw in that's just within arm's reach because, you know, oh man, I'm losing it. Setting yourself up is going to be your biggest part. And after that, it's practice, practice, practice. And it may seem like, well, it's fire, get it started. And sometimes it is just super easy. As you saw, we struggled with the bundle a little bit. There was some moisture in there. And I've watched people actually that, you know, this isn't their first time struggle with getting fire going. So, and I struggle with it too sometimes. If it's wet out, it's a struggle. And actually next time it's raining, and it won't be for a couple months, because if it's going to do anything, it's going to snow. Maybe we'll purposely do a damp fire start. So just a quick video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to get, like I said, more and more into trying to provide some quality information for you guys and a quality video. Try to step my game up on how I film, the angles and all that. So it's a learning experience for me doing this for you guys. Again, if you'd like to check it out, in the description, there's a link for the website for the Montana Wilderness Survival and Bushcraft School. It'd be really great if you guys would stop in and take a look at that. Also, if you'd like to be a part and help support any of this projects, the YouTube, the school, my ability to do this stuff, I do have a Patreon set up for supporters to help support. There will be a link in the description for my Patreon. We're growing in subscribers. It goes all the way down to the base model, which is $1 a month subscription. So I mean, it starts way down at the bottom. $1 a month is the starting, and then there's tiers which come with different things. As the Patreon grows, I can do more. I'm going to do more giveaways here on the YouTube. I'm also going to do designated giveaways for the patrons. I've got some VIP patrons that are donating a good amount of money a month into helping me establish all this, and I want to do as much as I can back for the community that's helping me. So I really appreciate you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. We're going to get into all these basics. We're going to get into shelter, we're going to get into water, we're going to get into first aid, we're going to get into the kit, we're going to get into, well, within the first aid, you know, your hypothermia situations and different things like that. We're going to get into clothing, layer system, material systems, different. So I'm really going to break all these things down that I just do naturally, that I really think everybody should know, and it'll improve your hobby time, your fun time out in the bush, but it'll also set a foundation in you that if you find yourself in an emergency situation, you're going to say, I got this. You can be that guy that says, I got this. While everybody else around you is like, oh no, you know, we're stuck. You know, what are we going to do? You're going to be over there just setting up camp. So, all right. Thank you very much for your time. God bless you. Check out the links in the description. This thing is starting to grow, but it's very small. We're working toward the 1,000 subs. And the Montana Wilderness Survival and Bushcraft School, I'm just getting it off the ground. I mean, I'm just getting the business cards in and the licensing paperwork and all the different forms and disclaimers and legal stuff that goes along with doing something like that. We're just getting it going. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you, and God bless.